Hello and welcome to our When I Dare to Be Powerful conference podcast episode. This is one in a series of podcasts and online conversations we are having relating to voice as an agent of change. The talks and podcasts will run every week right up to our one-day conference in June. This conference will bring together filmmakers, artists, writers, and activists, together with conceptual thinkers and cultural theorists, as we ask what voice means to us. And hopefully, we provoke some thinking relating to using voice as an act of resistance. Please do visit our website, when I dare to be powerful conference.wordpress.com, where you will be able to find out more about our one-day in-person conference taking place on the 21st of June in Nottingham. You will also find the full details relating to our podcasts, online talks, and of course, you will find the full conference program itself on the website. You will also be able to register to attend. Registration is completely free. Please do come along, and you will also find the link on the New Art Exchange and Bonington Gallery websites. We're very grateful that our When I Dare to Be Powerful International Conference and Talks have been sponsored and supported by Midlands 3 and 4 cities, Bonington Gallery, and New Art Exchange. I'm Viola, and today I'm really pleased to welcome Olivia Lopez Calderon, joining us from Belgium. Olivia is a
Hi.
25-year-old. Hi, Olivia. Hi. So, Olivia is a 25-year-old creative centipede, and she is the founder of the non-profit organization Skin Mutts. She is based in Brussels. She is passionate about fostering open, honest conversations around cultural identity. And Olivia's range of skills as an organizer, producer, and communicator have helped her bring together multicultural communities and create space for people to share their stories. Her creative talent as an art director is another asset that she brings to the table, giving Skin Mutts a unique and engaging aesthetic. And through Skin Mutts, Olivia hopes to inspire people to celebrate their unique identities and create a more understanding world. The website for Skin Mutts is skinmutts.com. Welcome, Olivia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for the invite. I'm very happy to be here today and talk about Skin Mutts.
Amazing. Yes. So I wanted to start with an apparently basic but actually fundamental question. So who is Olivia? You describe yourself as a creative centipede, and I love that expression. Could you expand a little bit more on that?
Thank you. I actually heard that expression first from a friend of mine here in Brussels, and she also does a lot of work in the social, cultural, artistic sector. So I was like, let me use this too. It sounds really nice. Who am I? I do feel like a few years ago, I would have answered this question with, I'm a citizen of the world. But with time, it became very cheesy. So it's something that I don't really use anymore. I am the founder of Skin Mutts. I work in the social cultural environment in Brussels. And I always try to distance myself a little bit from Skin Mutts as my job in my introduction, but it's very hard because Skin Mutts is so tied with my identity and with who I am. So for today, I'm going to be the founder of Skin Mutts. And I also do other things besides that. And cultural centipede, creative centipede is really because I've worked with Skin Mutts also a lot in artistic sectors as a art director. And I've been now more and more working as an art director in other projects. So that's a bit the creative centipede, Olivia.
That is actually awesome. So you really are like a multi-talented young activist and person. That is amazing to hear. And so what precisely is Skin Mutts and how did it start?
So Skin Mutts is a platform for people that grew up with different cultures and belong to multiple ethnicities. It's a platform that actually started probably in 2016. And today it became an amazing community. Since 1 year, it's an official nonprofit organization. And it brings together people with a multicultural background. So that could be mixed people, second generation, diaspora people, third culture kids. And it's really a place where people get to share and question their cultural identity, because I feel like we all have very different stories. We all come from different places with different cultural backgrounds, but the feelings of belonging, sense of home, sense of community, it's something that we all share and we all have questions about. So it's a way to bring people together and maybe find answers, or really just find comfort in knowing that you're not alone. And the way it started is because in 2014, I was an exchange student in Belgium. And I grew up in Italy. I was born and grew up in Italy from German mom, and my dad is from Guatemala. So when I came to Belgium, I went to high school there, and I was the new girl. And as the new girl, I always had to introduce myself, and people wanted to know where I was from. And I realized at that time that for me it was a really difficult answer to a difficult question to answer, because I didn't really know what they were asking me. I didn't know if they were asking me where I grew up, or why I have a Spanish last name, or why I could understand Dutch so fast, because I grew up talking German, so Dutch wasn't a difficult language for me to learn. So from there, I started thinking about my own cultural identity and thinking like, oh, what is my culture? What is my home? And I got into a little bit of an identity crisis. And I started talking about this with my friends, basically, who are also mixed back in Italy, in the small town where I grew up. And I realized that actually it was something that other people were feeling too, just nobody was talking about it. So I started talking about it. And then I moved to Belgium. Today I live in Brussels to study and to work. And here it grew into a way bigger project. And today there are so many people involved. So that's a bit, the story of Skin Mutts in a nutshell.
That is actually very impressive that you were able to channel this sort of questions and the curiosity also from other people into this project that, as you said, then expanded over time. And I wanted to ask you, why precisely Skin Mutts? Why did you pick this name? How did it come up?
So Skin Mutts is the name that I came up with when I first started the personal project. Skin Mutts was first just like a photo project. I was taking pictures of my friends who were also mixed or multicultural. And the name basically stayed ever since. And Mutts is the translation of the Italian word mestizo, or actually the Spanish word mestizo. And technically this word is originally identified people who were the children of indigenous peoples in Latin America and European colonizers. And today the word is used, I know it's used in Italian and I know it's used in French to say mixed. And I remember being a teenager in Italy and having somebody call me meticcia. And I didn't really know how to feel about it. So I decided to embrace it. And I know that in English, it has a more negative connotation because of the history behind it. But in some way, it's a way to reclaim the word and to state our mixedness and to be proud of it. And it's also, I mean, people's mixedness is very different from person to person. So cultural identity and communities, ethnicities, and being mixed specifically is not a monolith. It goes beyond the skin because there is so much more nuance behind skin color and physical appearance, and even the person themselves. There is so much behind us as individuals. We all have history and people and experiences that came before us. So it's really a way to reclaim the way it was used in a negative way. I mean, like, we are here and we have multiple cultures within ourselves. And this is also the way we present ourselves to the world and how we live.
Yes, and this also opens up the conversation, yes, about the power of language, reclaiming slurs by marginalized communities, which is fundamental, honestly, as you said, also to sort of embrace the negative side that was given to the word, and sort of like say, yeah, we're reclaiming it and now we're using it to describe ourselves, so you cannot take this from us. So it's this kind of, like dynamics of language that emphasizes also a sense of community, because that's what you did indeed with the name itself. Sort of, it invokes
100%.
this sense of communities that everyone who is indeed mixed or multicultural, diaspora, third culture kid can reclaim and can feel themselves like represented in this term.
Yeah, and it's also it's also something where we say that people within Skin Mutts are multicultural, but we don't expect everybody who is multicultural to feel related to Skin Mutts. I feel like there are also many people who are multicultural that don't necessarily want to talk about their cultural identity, that know exactly what community they belong to, and don't have any questions about their cultural identity. So, I mean, it is a place for people who have questions, but it doesn't mean that it's anybody who is multicultural. It's really to create a space to ask questions and to wonder and to feel together. But it doesn't mean that it relates to anybody who grew up with different cultures.
Yes, of course, that makes sense. Definitely makes sense. So it's not really, it wouldn't be that much of an umbrella, like as much as sort of like a haven for people who are already interrogating, already have like this sort of spark about the like questions about their own identity that they want to explore. But maybe it can also be, like for people who haven't really questioned that, and then they come across your project and they start questioning it. Has that happened?
Yeah, that has happened quite often, actually. It's funny to see how people sometimes they which is completely fine, not knowing something. Some people who are multicultural, who grew up with different cultures, they come up to us and they're like, oh, I never heard the concept of cultural identity. What is that? And it's so nice that people get interested in these topics and they want to learn more about it. So it's nice to see how people get more confident being around people who have questions. So it's funny to see how we all have questions, but we find the power within that and being like, okay, we can talk about the grief that we feel, even if we've never lived in our parents' country, or maybe we don't know the language 100%. We can feel sad about not knowing, or even apathy in some sort. So there is a lot of a lot of moments of sharing and talking about it. So yeah, there are definitely been moments where people have come up to us and said like, thank you for talking about this. I didn't even know that was an option to talk about these things. I didn't even know I needed to talk about these things. And now I realize how many questions I had, or how insecure I was about certain topics, and now I can find people to relate to.
Yes, and I guess this relates to the impact of your work with Skin Mutts, of the work that your organization is doing on the people you work with. And I think this speaks volumes about all the work itself that you've put so much effort in. And I wanted to ask you very practically, so how do you operate with Skin Mutts? What are some instances of workshops that you do, projects?
So the project started with me. I started doing workshops and activities here in Belgium, and I was by myself. For different events, I would ask friends to help me, but in the structure of Skin Mutts, it was just me basically. And since a year and a half, almost 2 years, Lisa, the co-founder of Skin Mutts as a nonprofit organization, works with me, and together we organize different workshops and like general activities and small events here in Belgium. We even got the chance to organize two talks, or to be part of two talks in Italy in November and December. And what we do is basically we open the conversation around cultural identity. So, for example, one of the workshops that we do is basically a speed date where we have topics of cultural identity on some cards, and people get 5 minutes to talk about that specific topic. So that specific sentence, for example. And we usually see that the audience that comes to these type of workshops really depends from who is hosting. So, for example, we did it in November at the House of European History in Brussels, and the people that joined the workshop were mostly from the European bubble. We did it with the colonizing student group of a university here in Brussels, and the audience was people in their 20s who also have a multicultural background. And so it's interesting to see how different people react to this workshop, but we always got the same feedback of now I could actually talk about these things, because sometimes it's like there are these buzzwords or just things that you see on the internet that but you never really talk about, or it's very superficial. But during this workshop, you actually get to exchange opinions and talk about different perspectives and see also how other people think. And it's maybe something you never took in consideration. So then it's like, I never thought about this from this side. So you just take different perspectives and you give your opinion, and it's a way to give more context and nuance to people's identities. So this is what we do. Mostly this is the type of workshop that we mostly bring around. And then we also have some events with some panels, talking, for example, about the feeling of home, or having like a small market with people from Brussels and Antwerp. We had this last year, and they were selling their own art, and we had some art exhibitions. We had Citizens, which was a photo project that we did here in Brussels, where we interviewed 20 people about their cultural identity in Brussels specifically. So how their cultural identity was tied with the city where they grew up or live. And there were some really, really interesting discussions about gentrification, about education, about language, especially in Brussels, that is such a multicultural city. So we operate in different ways, but I think that the main thing for us is to try to be as accessible as possible, both in language and in concepts, in the sense that it's okay if people don't know the meaning of something. It's okay if people never heard that word. We are here to talk about it and to explain it, or just make it accessible, even in language, in the sense of language, because Brussels, there are 3 official languages, basically. There is Dutch, French, and English. So sometimes it becomes hard to write something or have a text that is going to be understandable for everybody. So already, mostly we operate in English within Skin Mutts, and we try to write as simple as possible, just so everybody can understand what we're talking about. We don't want to leave people behind just because they don't know the meaning of a concept. We want to actually open the doors also for them and be like, look, there is also this perspective, or you can talk about this with these words and come with us. We want to like bring people with us. So this is a bit, the structure of Skin Mutts. And the main thing is that we try to, I feel like there are a lot of multicultural organizations, specifically in Brussels, but also just around the world. And the ones here in Belgium, I feel like they're they gravitate a lot around the European Union, especially in the city here in Brussels. So they talk about multiculturalism in a very European way, like with a very very specific structure. And we really don't want to do that. We start from stories from people, and then yeah, it's obvious that the stories are going to connect to some bigger issues that there are. And I feel like some organizations, some multicultural organizations that are more next to the European bubble, they do the opposite. They take the problem and then they go to the people. So it's a different way to operate. We really start from the community and we're like, okay, what is the issue, or what is something that you're worried about? What is something that you feel like you cannot talk about, or something that you want to share with a lot of people? And then we take the issue or the whatever concept that is, and then we create something out of it. So it's a bit reversed. The way we work is a bit reversed than the European bubble.
Yes, so this reverse mechanism actually testifies to the very inclusivity of skin mutts. So this sort of like also the degentrification and decolonization of the whole talk around multiculturalism, which of course in the European context is still a very touchy subject. And the fact that you sort of extend the conversation beyond the academic, beyond the formal, and actually do it. This is going to sound very cheesy, but you do it for the people, you do it for the community. And so this sort of reverse dynamics, I think, really is really on point, is really spot on for the work that you do. And that's also, I think, one of the reasons why you do this amazing work. There's also one of the reasons why, I also said it in a reverse way, but like, there's one of the reasons why your work is so good and it has this impact that it actually has on people. And on this latter point, I wanted to ask you, what does voice mean to you as a person? I know you just touched on this in an implicit way, but like, what does it mean to you as a person, as Olivia, and also in the context of the work that you do, which of course these two things are very correlated, as you explained.
Yeah, I think voice for me is really about togetherness, in a sense.
Yes.
And voice is created by different people, and it becomes louder the bigger the community is, and the more the community is connected. And it's something that I've looked for a long time, because I myself have a lot of just not necessarily questions, but really things that I felt that I could never talk about with anybody, about my own story, or the story of my parents, which is inevitably also my story. And that became my voice, it's like a choir. I wanted to find my choir and I didn't know where to go. And then it was funny how I found my choir in between voices that are totally different from mine. But we get to share them, and it's voices that speak different languages, that have different sounds, that come from different places. So this is super cheesy. Like, I'm saying these words, I'm like, wow, this is so cheesy. But yeah, I really feel like the voice is in community, and being able to share your experience and finding that connection. And I know that I couldn't share some things growing up in Italy, in the small town I grew up in, because even today, sometimes when I go back home, quote unquote, in Italy, I talk about what I'm doing in Belgium, and there are still people today, people that I've known for 15 years, that are like, good for you, but I still don't really understand what you're doing, but good for you. And people that tell me like, I don't really get the need of like talking about cultural identity, because like, you're Italian, like, okay, so like, what's the point? So it's funny to see how even after many years, people still don't really get it, which is fine. It's not for them to get. And I found people elsewhere, and I join their voices, and I join voices with people outside the small town where I grew up in. So that's for me having a voice, and having a voice means also giving voices to other people and giving the spotlight to the community.
Definitely, I really like the very poetic way to express voice. The whole choir metaphor, I actually really liked it. And I am really impressed by you saying that it's not for them to get. So the people who don't actually want to get it, like, it's also about setting boundaries, isn't it? And I think that I don't know how long it took you to, like, sort of, maybe it didn't take you long to sort of, like, decide to yourself, okay, it's not worth it to keep explaining to them that the work that I do, what I'm doing, if they don't want to get it, then, as you said, it's not for them to get. So was it a sort of process for you to come to terms with this, or was it like from the get-go?
I really believe, or I see how it is with people that are part of the community of Skin Mutts, how sometimes I'm just talking about something, and I'm just saying something like, for example, I reference my grandma. My grandma speaks German to me, and I answer back in Italian. So I'm just saying something like, oh, and my grandma never knows how to say that word in Italian. And immediately I can see in the eyes of like people from the community are like, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it also happens with my aunts, or also my grandma, my grandpa, my parents. It's just something that they know exactly what I'm talking about. And I know that with other people, this doesn't happen. But also, I mean, it's just not their experience. So I feel like they can try to understand it to some point. And if they don't get it, then they don't get it. And it's different experiences, if it's different ways of growing up. But what I do expect or request is still having respect for each other and just understanding for each other. You don't have to really get what I'm talking about. We don't have to have the same experience. You just have to respect my experience. And yeah, but if somebody doesn't get it, I can try to explain it. And if they don't want to understand it, I feel like then I'm putting so much effort and emotional labor into it for people who don't even care. And I am always going to try to explain it as much as possible. But sometimes you really see a wall with people. Like they're not, you can see that they're not trying to understand you. So then it's not that I let it be, but I have to distance myself and then go back to it later. So sometimes if they don't get it, they don't get it. I hope that one day they will. But in the meantime, it's important that there is respect for one another.
Absolutely. And that should be basic human decency, honestly. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, it just isn't there. And that's a conversation for another time, I think. That's a really long conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a bit about, so we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present of Skin Mutts, and let's touch a bit on the future of the organization. So what do you want to achieve with Skin Mutts, and what does the future look like for you and for Skin Mutts?
For now, the near future, it's really finding the budget to keep doing this. This is the very near future.
Fair enough.
We are really, we are filling in a lot of dossiers or grants to try to support the project, because me and Lisa have been doing this now for almost 2 years, and the thing is that both for me and Lisa, it's so much tied to our identity, and we just have so much personal interest in making the project alive and in continuing the project, that sometimes we forget that we also have to pay the bills. So it becomes tricky because we want to keep doing everything. And sometimes we find some partners and they're like, oh, but we don't really have the budget. And we're like, "Ah, it doesn't matter. It's for the community. Let's do it." But we've had a lot of talks in the past few months, also from other organizations in Brussels that also focus on people of diaspora or second generation. And they're like, that's amazing that you do it for the community, but also you have to think about yourself, because it's always this thing of like, if your glass is empty, you can't pour into anybody's cup, and then it just doesn't work. And it's
Exactly.
100% true, but it's very difficult for me and Lisa both to accept. But so we took this year to really concentrate on having fundings for next projects, because one of the biggest projects that we did, it's a Skin Mutts magazine. We had the first issue coming out in October last year. And in this issue, the main theme of the first issue was cultural dissonance. So the confusion and discomfort that there is sometimes of belonging to different cultures. And we had writers from all around the world and photographers based in Brussels, models, illustrators, graphic designers, so a whole team, editorial team, to put this together. And this was possible because we did a crowdfunding, and that was also insane to actually see the practical support that we got from our community, because the crowdfunding was a success, and this is how the magazine happened. So that was amazing to see, but it was a lot of work into this magazine.
Yeah.
I was gonna say we all love doing this. I hope that everybody loved working on the magazine. I definitely really liked doing it. It was exhausting, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it was amazing to see how the final product really spoke to a lot of people. And the reason for the magazine was, I personally just love magazines, books, everything, anything paper. I just want to have anything concrete. I feel like it's always really nice to read stories in a book. I feel it's way nicer than to read them digitally. So I wanted to have something that people could hold in their hands, something of Skin Mutts that people could hold. And my one of my main points, I wanted to make it pretty. I wanted to make it very visually appealing, because I believe that sometimes people who don't are not around these type of topics, or like around, I'm gonna say, activist circles, I feel like sometimes they get scared from big words, quote unquote. So if it says
Yeah.
cultural dissonance, if it says multiculturalism, I feel like sometimes maybe it doesn't scare away people, but it has this effect of like, oh no, it's gonna be like a difficult read. It's gonna be very like about theory. It's gonna be very. It's not for me. So I wanted to make something pretty so that people would be attracted to it just because they want to look at the pictures. They want to see, like, the magazine is very colorful, and it's something
Yeah.
that you can put in your living room on your coffee table. It's something that just is pretty to have. And then if people are just attracted to it by the aesthetic of it, and they look through it and they get even like one small message of all the things that are written in this magazine, I think it's like 130 pages. There are a lot of different perspectives, different stories. But if one person that wasn't in these activist circles can get one little message out of it, then that's amazing. Then that's the whole point. So we really want to continue with the magazine and make it a yearly magazine. This is the biggest project of the future. So I hope we're gonna find the budget to make this happen. And then in general, we would like to expand more in Europe. So we went to Milan from November to February because it's a city that I knew. So it was easy to make connections,
Yes.
or easier to make connections. and we would like, in the next few years to go maybe to the Netherlands, maybe even to the UK, to Spain, just expand, and maybe having teams around Europe. But I feel like myself saying these words, and in the back of my head, I'm like, this is so much money, but it's gonna come with time.
But yeah.
I really believe it's gonna come
Why
with
not?
time. Yeah, yeah. So this is the further future for Skin Mutts, continuing the magazine and really just having people of the community find us, people that do question their cultural identity to find us and to be part of our community.
Amazing, Olivia. Yeah, I think that's definitely fundamental. And the work with the magazine as well, of course, is very impressive. And I'm sure, fingers crossed for all these future projects. And I'm sure, as you said, that things will come in time. Of course, there is time, so that's a good thing. And are there any ways that our listeners who are not based in Belgium can keep up with your work and with the magazine?
So we are very active on Instagram. That's our main channel to communicate online. So Skin Mutts on Instagram. We also did a residency in a theater in Brussels a few weeks ago, and it was about multilingualism. So in 2 weeks, 6 spoken word artists created a new piece about their own multilingualism, which was really interesting it was interesting to see the process, because people, of course, spoke different languages, but even they were talking about their multilingualism from different angles. There was somebody who specifically concentrated on accents, not necessarily on languages. So he speaks French and English, and he was just talking about it with different people. He has different accents. But this to say that we had an event on the last day of March, and everything was recorded. So it's going to come out on YouTube and Instagram soon, probably in the next month. And for the magazine, we still have, we're still bringing around the first issue, and people can also order it online. There is also link in bio and Instagram to find our shop, but people can still get the first issue of Skin Mutts online.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Olivia, for this enlightening conversation. It was a pleasure to have you here and to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Viola. It was nice talking to you, and thank you again for the invite.